I think they're excited just to play. I mean, it's just been. I don't feel like we've played as much this year at this point than we have maybe in seasons in the past. So to get your first home match is always exciting. And I also think they felt like they didn't play extremely well against SMU last week, and so being able to kind of maybe fix some wrongs there and start trying to see how we really adapted since our last match, I think is key for them.
Is it still so early? Are there certain things you look for? Is it just kind of finding the identity of the team? Are there specific things you work on this early?
Yeah, I mean, you try to think that there's an identity to the culture of Texas Tech women's tennis, but I think within that culture, every team that walks in the door has their own. And when you have 6 freshmen out of the 8, then they're still struggling to find their own identity. So a lot of that is, trying to figure out what is this team about, what makes this team special, what makes this team tick, what is the team across the net going to say about them when they leave, and they don't know what that is yet, and we can't expect them to know that quite yet.
We're talking in general. It's been pretty chilly here and whatnot. Tomorrow game being at noon, is that going to be? And obviously, it gets really hot near the end of the season. Is that something you guys practice for throughout the year? How do you? Not many sports have to deal with going from really cold, normal, really hot. How do you combat that?
Right. I think, there's some pros and cons, obviously, to not having our own indoor facility. I mean, I would say, the large majority of Power 5 schools have a indoor tennis facility. Not having one allows us to have to deal with the elements. It allows us to have to practice in 38, 40 degree weather where other teams don't. So for us sitting here right now where we're all shivering in the shade, these girls are in shorts and t-shirt because this is a warm day for them. The negative to that is there's just days that you just can't practice. And so we've lost a lot of practice days, more this year than any, just not having an indoor and just not putting our players out in those elements. So, as it gets warmer, we get more practice days. But, yeah, I mean, we get used to it. It's part of the life. We always go on the road early. We went and spent a week in Orlando just because we know we're going to lose practice days here in Lubbock.
And even like for tomorrow, one that is that early, it's gonna be chilly. Is that impact them more because they're used to it? Do you not really expect?
I think typically it would have more of an impact on the team coming in. I think it probably bothers us a lot less. Now with Wyoming coming in, I don't think they're probably too worried about 40 or 50 or whatever it's going to be tomorrow. The other thing that has a negative impact is obviously your fan support. We want people to come out and support. It's a special product we're putting on the court, but I understand when it's 42 degrees at noon, it's hard to get fans out here to do that.
Are you still, obviously we talked about last year was another successful season as far as you guys went and everything. Is it still, with as much as you lost, are you still looking for certain people to step up and the leadership of the team? Is that still something you're trying to figure out?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to captain and those things, I think we have that. Felicity Maltby's the face of this program. I think she's learned from the best. She's a senior. She's one of the best players to ever come through Texas Tech. And so she's handled that really well. I think what you're looking for is that next leader. Like you could identify Felicity when she was a freshman or sophomore that this is the face of the program in a couple years. I think what we're looking at now is who's going to be that next face of the program. Is that Nell Miller? Is that Olivia Pete? Is that Antonella Stoica? You're looking for that next leader. And when they start grooming themselves, then you start having kind of like a co-captain, a co-leader on the court. And right now we don't have that, but I think we're getting closer, and I think people will start emerging.
Is your 1 through 6 right now? Is that set at this point? Mm-hmm. Or, and I know it's always kind of evolving throughout the year, but are you pretty comfortable with where it is right now? Or are you still trying out some things?
I would say opposite. I'm very uncomfortable. I have, honestly, I have no idea. I mean, I think, it's so early in the year, and playing a dual match season is totally different than a fall season. The type of pressure, how they play in front of the crowds, how they play on the road. I think some people love that spotlight, and they find another gear, but maybe they didn't have in the fall, and others kind of wilt under that. And so I think it's an ever-evolving thing, and will be probably throughout the year, and then hopefully it settles in, right around the Big 12 time.
I guess finally, what are some of the strengths you've identified of this team early on that you think can be something that either carry over from last year or new things you think this team can really do this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the strength at the top of the lineup is very good. Talent-wise, I think we're very, very similar, but I think the energy and the heartbeat of this program comes from the top 2 or 3 spots on this team. We're still looking at depth through that. I felt like last year we weren't necessarily looking at the energy coming from a certain section of the team with more or less all 6 spots. I feel like right now we're not as good at the bottom of that part as we should be. So we're still working through that and trying to get better. And they're just having to try to get comfortable in their own skin. I mean, tennis is a sport that's played until you're 18 years old in a very conservative, meek manner, and very shined out upon if you're loud and you're boisterous and you're very outgoing. And then you ask the 18-year-old girls to say, okay, now flip the switch. You've got to be, you've got to be crazy. You've got to be intense, and that's just hard for them to do. So it's getting comfortable in their own skin.
You mentioned the team actually likes to. They didn't feel like they did well against SMU. They want to get back out. Are you as a coach, are you similar like that, where you just want to get back out there and get another match under your belt?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think for me, it's more like, okay, we talked. We had a lot of learning lessons in that. It's always nice to have a learning lesson after a 4-3 win opposed to a 4-3 loss. But I think it's sitting there going, okay, I'm excited to get back on the court to see if they learned those lessons and if they took them to heart. I mean, I think as a coach, I think every coach at Texas Tech would say the same thing. I mean, I think Chris Beard would sit there and tell you, say, hey, in the stretch they're in, he's excited to get back on the court against Arkansas and find out they've learned something from Kansas State. I mean, I think all coaches are all the same. And so we're no different, and I'm excited to see if they've learned anything, in the last week.